It's good to meet you, man.
You too.
It's good. Great. It's good to see you guys. I mean, after what 15 plus years of just looking at how things move and how you become huge, it's
just
kind of
like these microphones.
It's kind of surreal, man, to just sit with you guys and discuss this brand new work. And let's just get started. Let's just talk a bit about the new album. I want to start off by asking why the car plays such an important role in the entire body of work. It's kind of my impression. It's not just the title of the album, but it's a bit more than that.
It seems it seems to crop up a couple of times in the lyrics, certainly, and there is a picture of one on the front of it, and that was enough of a reason for me to think that should be the title. Yeah. Beyond that, that's all the cars.
Think about it that much.
Yeah.
There would be more to it than that, you know. I really did.
If I had $1.
Let's talk about the making of the album. How long it took you guys to work on these new songs? How many of those songs we haven't heard from because they just didn't make it through the cut, the whole thing?
I think the process from like starting to write stuff to recording it was quite a long time. But by the time we went into the studio, we kind of knew what we were recording. There might have been a few leftovers that didn't make it on the record, but we pretty much had in mind what we needed to do by the time we went into the studio. So that part of it was relatively short compared to, to the whole process, like start to finish. But yeah, I don't think we recorded that many that aren't on the record.
No.
Not many left over.
Is it a continuation of Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino?
Not deliberately, I don't think, really. But I would have to concede that every time I think you do something new, the previous thing has an effect on it, I think I certainly would like to think that in the lyrics, certainly I was trying to avoid any more sci-fi stuff, but I've realised that there's still a little bit hiding in the cracks.
Why were you so into sci-fi for Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino? I was going through the album yesterday right after I've heard The Carver like 7 times, and it was like, man, Alex was really into this whole sci-fi thing, man.
Yeah. I don't know the why of it. Eludes me.
Is it just the cinematic nature of it all? Just beyond the genre? Just the fact that it continues to be quite cinematic, what you're doing right now?
Well, in terms of this picking up where the other one left off?
Right.
Yeah, I suppose even if lyrically it's not, maybe musically it led to this. And then, which I think has always been the case with us. It's like, even if it might feel, sometimes it might have felt like more of a dramatic leap from one album to the next, but for us I think it felt like a natural progression.
How has the crowd reacted to the new songs in the last few gigs that you've played?
We've only played one of them, but it seems to me like it's been a positive reaction for as far as I can see from up there in the spotlight.
What about you? What do you think has been the reaction? I think it was I haven't quite been...
Quite where I think I am. I think it's big, and I think personally I felt like it's got better for us as well, like playing it. And as that went along, it seemed then people started to get wind of it, and obviously like people do like film it and share it a bit, so I reckon people were learning it that way a little bit as well. Because it seemed like people, when we started it, they knew that, you know, what we were doing. And it's been fun to play it.
How many shows have you performed so far, and why did this whole new journey start with the shows and not with, you know, just regular promotion like we're doing right now, but, you know, just going out there and...
Good question.
I don't know that.
I think it seems like everything. I suppose there's just no rules anymore now. Things happen in this game. But I don't know how many shows have been. I don't know, probably like 15. That's a very quick guess.
Yeah.
Based on I don't know what. But playing, putting the cart before the horse. I don't think that's. I don't know. It didn't feel that weird until you just said it. So I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know if there was a master plan behind it. But.
Have there ever been any plans in what you guys do, given the fact that if you look back at how you started, you pretty much represent or define the digital era of promotion and musical disruption coming from MySpace and just, you know, blowing things up in such, you know, extraordinary ways in terms of how people got to discover bands such as yourselves.
Yeah, sorry, I could not stop thinking about the idea of the horse before the car that whole time.
The horse before the car.
Because, but that's my problem.
That's okay. Yeah, no, you were mentioning the rules, right? How there are no more rules, but yet again, if I look back and, you know, as I was taking my notes, I was thinking about how there were really never any rules around the Arctic Monkeys, you know, putting songs out there and becoming huge and becoming this really force to be reckoned with, because I guess you rewrote the
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that was like timing. It kind of was out of our hands at that point. We were still going with a fairly traditional approach, or what we thought was, or all we knew, in terms of like playing a lot of gigs and trying to record demos and stuff. And then the fact that it all got shared online, I suppose, was like timing, like the right place at the right time. It wasn't like a big idea that we had to, do that. I mean, I wish I was the one who thought of that. That'd be cool. But yeah, I mean, we still have a fairly traditional approach to like making records, and now we like, decide what songs and in which order and stuff. I don't think like the new era has changed our approach to how we make records or do stuff like this.
Talk to me about that approach, about how traditional it is to sit and work on these songs together. How does it work inside the Arctic Monkeys?
I suppose a little bit differently to the way it did 20 years ago. I suppose we spend less, I mean, broadly speaking, in the first few records, it was probably, we'd spend time in a rehearsal space or something together, and we'd be, put the songs together in that. And I think probably in the last 10 years or so, that's happened less in the creation of these albums, and it's been more around a studio. And
it does sound like that, it does definitely, especially when it comes to this album.
Yeah, reflected in the way these last records are. I think that really started around AM, probably. I think that, the record before that was definitely, I remember, we put it all together in a rehearsal room and went and, kind of sort of strictly recorded it like that and pretty live. And then I guess Are You Mine was kind of like the last time that sort of thing really happened like that. And then I suppose other songs on that record, Do I Wanna Know, for instance, was, I suppose starting to experiment more with the idea of the studio.
What were those things that you were experimenting with back when you guys were doing the promotion for AM? I remember talking to Matt and being Matt being really focused on, or not focused, but very inspired by hip hop and by what he was listening to back then. How does that work now? What are the inspirations behind the car? Beyond, something like what you guys did on AM, where you really felt that, big bottom on things like Do I Want to Know?
Well, I think that was just an example of where we were sort of making the influences more obvious, in a way, whether that was on purpose or not. And because it's not like I'm listening to wildly different music to I was back then either, or it just comes out in different ways, I suppose. And even like the ability to do certain things, getting better at playing certain ways has been a difference as well. Because I'm sure, like years ago, we'd have liked to have made a record like this, but probably didn't have the ability to do it. And again, and that just naturally getting better at things. But I don't necessarily think that influences have dramatically changed. But yeah, obviously, always find new things that inspire you and have an impact.
What are those things that inspire the car? As I listen to the album over and over again, I really want to know what you guys are listening to, what it is that is inspiring this album.
I think, Matthew was just saying there, it does feel more difficult to draw a line to those things with this, today, with this new record. In the past, I feel like you've been able to, in this very situation, been able to sit here and say, oh, it was this, and this. But this time I don't know. I don't remember kind of thinking about it like that as much this time, or something, or even discussing saying, oh, let's try and do something like this. It was just sort of unspoken.
Sure, but when I mention inspiration, I'm not just talking about, references of pop culture, if you will, but also places, people, things,
I don't know. One thing maybe is that there's a photograph that Matt took on the cover of the record that was there a long time before the record was there. I can't remember that happening before really, and I think that was always in the back of our minds that was whatever we were making was going to sort of fit behind that. So in a way, I suppose that kind of was part of the inspiration. Yeah, I'd be happy to say that.
What about when every time you look into British culture, you look at two people. You always have this idea of Lennon-McCartney, and you have this idea of Jagger Richards. Does it work the same way with the Arctic Monkeys? Is it Turner, Helders, and then spreads throughout the band?
I don't think so. I think we're very much work well as a group, I think.
There's a sophistication around the car that, as I said before, comes a little bit along the lines of Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. And I was wondering if, this decision to move towards that sophistication and leaving a little bit of the guitar sound aside has ever crossed your mind? And the fact that you have many fans that go to the shows and want to experience the rock and roll side of the Arctic Monkeys. What's your take on that?
Well, there's plenty of that in the show, and I don't feel as if that's going anywhere really. But in terms of trying to capture that, whatever that thing is, on a record, it feels, I'm not saying, you'll never do that again, or, but maybe I am. It's not it's kind of, it's not as, I don't think it's as easy to sort of get back there as it seems like it might. And it's not as if, there's probably even on occasion we've attempted to think like that, but it just never really works out. You know, I think any time it feels like these things sometimes they want to move in their own direction, and you sort of have to get on board with that at some point. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I kind of like that, because I would think it's much easier to just stay on the rock and roll route, even though the shows, as you say, do have the previous material. But I guess my question has a lot more to do with what a fan would, how a fan would react to these new songs. And
well, yeah, I think the one thing that's sort of is the same as it was in the beginning with the first record, even, is we're sort of trusting our instinct to
move forward.
Sort of express ourselves in that way, and so I feel as if there's kind of a through line with that approach through the whole thing.
I think it's amazing because you continue to disrupt yourselves in ways that one would not expect as a listener. You know, when you sit back and listen to the new album, you find so many different things that you would not expect, and that's hard to do. And especially in this day and age where everything seems kind of monotonous and seems to sound like the same or look like the same. So yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting artistic ambition to just try and move forward with your audience, and that's pretty brilliant, you know.
Well, thank you.
I have a question regarding Sheffield and growing up in Sheffield. Because as a Colombian and listening to international music for so long, you know, we get waves of music coming from Sheffield every now and then. You know, we get the Human League, for example. You know, we get Pulp, for example, and we get the Arctic Monkeys. So I've always had this question to ask you. It's got to do with what it's like to grow up in Sheffield, and what do they feed you over there?
What's in the water?
What's in the water? Yeah.
I don't know what the secret is, and I don't know if it's worth knowing. I don't want to know what the secret is.
Something in the relish.
It must be the relish. Because I don't necessarily know if it's any greater output than other places in England, but I know what you mean. I mean, it is, yeah. It's certainly a special place for us.
Where are you guys living right now?
I live here.
And Alex?
Yeah, I've been in London quite a lot recently. Yeah.
After this, you're going on tour again, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much on
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future.
Talk to me about the strings on this album.
I think there's a space for them on the record, and I'm pretty happy with the way that we managed to sort of have them function in and out of, you know, what the band is doing. I think it's
where they are and where they aren't.
You know, I think we did a better job than we have done of sort of the dynamic within the songs, and yeah, I feel definitely there's things sort of take their turn and step into the background and come forward, and that's and the strings are included in that.
Going back to the notion of time and science fiction, another thing that I find interesting about the album is not being able to pinpoint an era. You know, it's not something you can say it's vintage or driven by vintage spirit.
I feel like that about the cover. That was something that like appealed about that. It was kind of, you know, I
Time or
feel
place.
I don't know where it. Yeah, that like doesn't seem like it's now or then, really.
It definitely sounds like you could listen to this 100 years from now and still not know where or when it took place, you know? Listen, guys, it's great talking to you. I really appreciate your taking the time to...
Thank you.
And I appreciate your having me here because it's definitely a privilege and an honor. And I wish you all the very best on everything that comes forward. And good meeting you, Matt.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Alex.
Nice one.
It's been great.